If you're noticing these signs, you're on the path to unlimited wealth. And I don't mean merely financial riches, though they often follow. I mean a wealth of opportunity, a wealth of confidence, a wealth of life itself, because wealth in its truest form begins not in your wallet, but in your mind. The man who is destined for abundance begins to change before the world recognizes it. Long before the money arrives, before the applause, before the results, there are signs, quiet signs, personal signs, markers that something internal has shifted. The first sign is awareness. You begin to see that most people are asleep, not in body but in thought. They wake up each day, but they never truly wake up. They move through life repeating yesterday, driven by habits they didn't choose, beliefs they never examined, and limitations they quietly accepted. But you, if you are beginning to notice this, you are already different. You begin to ask questions. Why do I do what I do? Who told me this was the limit? Why should I settle for what the masses accept as normal? When a man begins to ask these questions, not just out of frustration, but out of sincere curiosity, he is already separating himself from the 95%. You no longer see success as a game of luck or inheritance. You see it as a decision. And with that realization comes a subtle but powerful shift. Your mind becomes active, alive, hungry. You no longer seek distraction, you seek direction. You no longer chase comfort, you chase clarity. That is a sign, because the man on the path to wealth does not waste his energy trying to be liked. He uses it to become effective. He is no longer interested in gossip and complaint and the noisy confusion of the crowd. He becomes quiet but focused, calm but intentional. And it is in this stillness that wealth begins to bloom. Another sign appears in your attitude toward time. The wealthy do not experience time the way others do. To most people, a day is something to get through. To the man on the path to wealth, a day is an investment, each hour a seed. You stop saying, I don't have time, and instead begin asking, how am I using the time I do have? That question changes everything. You begin to see that your minutes are not just minutes, they are your life in miniature. When you waste one, you are throwing away a piece of yourself. But when you use one wisely, reading, planning, thinking, building, it multiplies beyond measure. You become selective about your inputs. You understand that your mind is like the soil of a great farm. Whatever you plant in it will grow. So you stop feeding it weeds. You stop letting others pollute your mental environment. You begin to read different books, listen to different voices, not because someone told you to, but because your soul demands it, because the old ways no longer satisfy you. And that too is a sign. You are shedding the skin of the average man and putting on the armor of the exceptional. The moment you begin to take responsibility for your own mind, you take control of your future. You notice another change. You no longer react, you respond. Instead of emotional outbursts, you practice reflection. Instead of complaining about circumstances, you start adapting to them. You are not perfect, but you are present, aware, focused. You may not have the wealth yet, but you are thinking like a man who will, and that is everything, because the world will always rise to meet the man who has already risen in thought. You begin to realize that no one is coming to save you, and you are not afraid. You are for the first time empowered. That shift in energy, it's unmistakable. The old excuses begin to sound foreign. You no longer say, I can't, with conviction. Instead, you ask, how can? You begin to see problems as puzzles, not punishments. You stop envying the rich and start studying them. What do they do differently? How do they speak? How do they think? And more importantly, how do they manage themselves when no one is watching? These are the questions that open doors. These are the questions that signal growth. You are not asking how to get rich quick. You are asking how to become a person worthy of wealth. And in that question, you become uncommon. And finally, you begin to respect money. Not worship it, but respect it. You understand that money is not the goal. It is a measure, a tool, a servant, not a master. You stop wasting it, you stop chasing it blindly, and you start building the habits that attract it naturally. Service, skill, strategy. You begin to understand that wealth is not the result of chance, but of cause. And when you align yourself with those causes by thinking rightly, acting deliberately, and serving consistently, wealth is inevitable. These are the early signs, the subtle shifts, the quiet indicators that you are on the right path. And though the world may not see them yet, though no one may praise you, you must hold on to them, because in time, they will become visible, tangible, undeniable. If you are seeing these signs, do not turn back. Keep walking, keep thinking, keep growing, because you are closer to abundance than you realize. And once you begin to notice the signs, once you've stepped onto that path, the next thing that appears, often without announcement, is a deep and steady desire for mastery. Not surface success, not quick wins, but true mastery. You start to care about doing things well, about understanding them, building them, improving them, refining them. And you care because something within you is awakened. You no longer want to go through the motions. You want to own what you do. This is a rare sign and a powerful one, because the average man wants recognition, but the man on the path to wealth wants competence. He knows that the world doesn't reward potential. It rewards results, and results come to the man who has trained, not once, not briefly, but continuously. He studies when others scroll. He listens when others talk. He takes notes when others forget. He revisits what he thought he already knew. That's a man preparing for abundance. That's a man investing in his foundation. Another sign soon follows. You begin to change your relationship with failure. You stop fearing it. In fact, you almost begin to welcome it. Not because you enjoy pain, but because you begin to see pain differently. You see it as information, as feedback, as refinement. While most people hide their failures, you study yours. You ask, what did I miss? What must I now improve? And from that reflection, you grow. That, my friend, is the mindset of wealth. Because money flows to those who adapt quickly, those who learn faster than they fall. You also begin to notice your tolerance for mediocrity shrinking. The things that once entertained you now bore you. Conversations that once filled your time now feel empty. You start walking away from things that waste your energy, not with judgment, but with clarity. Because you finally understand that every minute you spend tolerating the average delays your arrival at the exceptional. So you raise your standards, quietly, without announcement. You hold yourself to them, even when no one is watching. That internal shift, that quiet refusal to coast, is a sign of incoming wealth. And then, without even trying, you begin to attract a different kind of person. It may not be many, but it will be a few. People who think deeply, people who speak carefully, people who are building something. You recognize them because they carry that same quiet intensity that you now carry. They aren't interested in complaining or impressing. They're interested in growing, in creating, in multiplying. And when you find yourself in conversations with them, real conversations, rich with ideas, you'll know you've left the old world behind. And you are no longer alone on this path. Another sign, you begin to track, you write things down, you measure, you document, not to control every variable, but because you now value precision. You begin to keep score, not with others, but with yourself. You know how you spent your day. You know what you earned, what you saved, what you learned. This habit, though simple, is monumental, because wealth does not come to the man who hopes. It comes to the man who knows, the man who pays attention, the man who watches the numbers, understands the levers, and adapts accordingly, the man who measures his growth, is the man who multiplies it. And as you move deeper into this path, you'll notice something beautiful. You begin to respect process. You begin to love the grind, not because it's glamorous, but because it's yours. You take ownership. You wake up earlier, not because someone told you to, but because you want to. You build systems. You refine routines. You begin to engineer your environment for success. And when you look around at your space, your desk, your calendar, your work, you realize that it all reflects one thing. You have become intentional. That's wealth. That's power. You'll also notice a new kind of peace, a calm that others don't seem to have. While they rush and panic, you move steadily. While they second guess, you execute. And it's not because you have all the answers, but because you have clarity of purpose. You know what you're working toward. You know why it matters. That clarity removes the noise. It strips away distractions, and in its place, it gives you focus, laser focus. The man who walks with purpose cannot be stopped. He may be delayed, but he cannot be denied. And then finally, you begin to realize something strange. You start to feel as though you've already arrived, long before the money shows up, long before the outward symbols, because in your heart, in your mind, in your discipline, you are already wealthy. You've already won the most important battle, mastery over yourself. And once a man owns himself, there is nothing in this world he cannot also own. The bank account will follow. The success will arrive. But these are just reflections, echoes of an inner transformation. So if you've noticed these signs, hold fast. Do not look back. Do not seek shortcuts. Trust what is happening within you, because wealth is not something you chase. It is something you become. And once you become it, the world cannot help but respond. There comes a moment as the journey continues when the man walking toward wealth begins to feel a strange tension within himself, a pull between who he used to be and who he is becoming. And though this may be uncomfortable at times, it is one of the clearest signs of transformation, because no man becomes wealthy in spirit or in fortune without first shedding the patterns that once kept him small. You begin to feel distant from things that used to define you. Old habits, old crowds, old ways of thinking. They no longer fit. And you might ask, why do I feel this way? The answer is simple. Growth creates friction. You are outgrowing the version of you that once settled, the version of you that once hesitated, procrastinated, feared, and doubted. And that version, while familiar, no longer holds power over you. You are not becoming someone else. You are returning to who you were always meant to be. That quiet discomfort, that's just the noise of your old identity unraveling. You also begin to observe life with new eyes. You see cause and effect more clearly. You notice that behind every successful person is not just action, but consistent action. Not just vision, but structured vision. And you start to realize that success is not a single event, but the compounded result of decisions made in private. So you begin to take your private moments more seriously. What you do when no one is watching becomes more important than what you do in public. That shift, that deep respect for the unseen, that is another sign, because true wealth is built in silence. Soon, you begin to speak less and listen more. You realize that silence is not emptiness, it is observation. It is control. The man who rushes to speak often misses the wisdom that floats in the quiet, but the man who waits, who listens, who chooses his words with care, that man gains influence without effort. That man speaks once and is heard 10 times. The wealthy do not flood the room with their voice. They shape the room with their presence. And presence, my friend, is built in the crucible of restraint. Another sign emerges in your relationship with problems. Most people dread problems. They avoid them, complain about them, fear them. But something inside you begins to shift. You stop seeing problems as obstacles and start seeing them as invitations. Each one a lesson, a test, a mirror. You say, if this has appeared in my path, it must be mine to solve. And in doing so, you begin to attract opportunities, because wealth flows to the man who solves problems better than anyone else. He is not the loudest, nor the flashiest. He is the most reliable, and reliability is wealth. The man who shows up daily, with or without applause, is already rich. He is building trust, first with himself, then with the world. He does not chase moods, he chases results. His discipline is stronger than his emotion. And that perhaps is one of the rarest signs of all, when a man no longer depends on motivation to move. When he works because it is who he is, not how he feels. You can measure a man's future by how he behaves when no one is cheering. As you continue this path, you begin to experience another change. You no longer seek intensity. You seek consistency. You understand now that it is not the man who works the hardest once, but the man who works persistently, repeatedly, quietly, who builds the strongest foundation. You see the danger in burnout. You see the illusion of overnight success. You begin to play a longer game, a deeper game, one where patience is not weakness, but wisdom. The man who thinks in decades always defeats the man who thinks in days. And now the final sign in this stage of the journey. You begin to create, not just consume, not just analyze, but build. You write, you record, you design, you produce. You put your ideas into form, into the world. And at first, it may feel strange. It may feel like no one sees it, no one cares. But you press on, because the man who is destined for wealth does not create for applause. He creates from necessity. He has too much vision, too much insight, too much purpose to keep it inside. He must let it out. And that act of consistent creation is one of the clearest signs that wealth is. So if you are in this stage, if you are feeling the distance from your old self, if you are choosing silence over noise, consistency over intensity, creation over consumption, do not doubt yourself. You are not lost. You are simply rising, and the world, though it may not reflect your growth yet, will soon mirror it in ways beyond your imagination. As you move further down the path, a new realization takes root, one that most never discover because most never get this far. You begin to see that money is not the goal, it is a result of alignment, a result of structure, a result of how you think, how you speak, how you move. You realize that wealth is not something you pursue, but something you attract by the kind of person you become. And this realization changes everything. Because now you stop chasing tactics and you start building principles. You stop looking for shortcuts and start strengthening your foundation. The man on the path to wealth understands that he must become the kind of person that wealth feels safe with. And wealth is only drawn to order, to precision, to responsibility. So you begin to clean up, not just your environment, but your systems, your inputs, your thinking. You start to honor your commitments, even the small ones. You told yourself you would write for 10 minutes. So you do. You told yourself you'd rise at 5. So you rise. You said you'd spend less than you earn. So you track every dollar. These tiny agreements kept over and over again build an unshakable integrity. And that integrity forms the spine of wealth. Because the man who can trust himself becomes someone others can trust. And trust in the world of money is everything. You'll notice something else. You begin to withdraw from noise, from urgency, from drama. You don't announce it. You don't explain it. You simply start to leave the places where your attention was scattered. You realize that attention is capital. And just like capital, if you waste it, you stay broke. So you protect it. You simplify your life. You use fewer apps. You take longer walks. You think more deeply. And as your attention sharpens, so does your power. And now another powerful sign reveals itself. You begin to separate effort from emotion. This is one of the highest levels of personal mastery. You no longer let your feelings dictate your discipline. You show up whether you feel like it or not. You work whether you're inspired or not. You build whether you're tired or not. Because you've finally understood that your feelings are passengers, not the driver. This changes your trajectory in ways few will ever understand. Because while the majority are still negotiating with themselves, still waiting for motivation, still driven by comfort, you are executing with precision. Your actions no longer waver with your mood. And this consistency, though quiet, is explosive. It compounds. Every day you do what you said you would do. You cast another vote for the person you are becoming. And the world begins to notice. Opportunities come quietly. Introductions are made. Unexpected doors open. Not because you forced them, but because you became the kind of person who is ready for them. You see, wealth doesn't respond to begging. It responds to preparation. And preparation is a private act. It happens in silence, in solitude, in the hours no one applauds. That's where your future is being built. You also begin to feel something unfamiliar. Detachment. Not apathy, but powerful detachment. You no longer react to rejection. You no longer beg to be chosen. You no longer chase outcomes that once owned you, because now you understand that your value does not depend on external validation. It depends on your alignment, your intention, your execution. You realize that you already have everything you need to move forward, and that realization liberates you. You begin to build things that last. You stop asking, "Will this go viral?" and start asking, "Will this still matter in 5 years?" You stop chasing fast returns and start playing the long game. You think in systems. You think in legacy. You think in structure. And slowly, the world bends toward you. Not because you shouted, but because you built something real. And here, perhaps for the first time, you begin to feel peace. A deep, centered peace. Not because life is easy, not because the journey is over, but because you've made a decision to walk the path no matter what. You no longer measure your progress in applause, likes, or attention. You measure it in truth, in alignment, in how you feel when you look in the mirror. And when you see yourself becoming stronger, wiser, calmer, more focused, you know you are rich already. So if you are beginning to detach, if your discipline is no longer tied to emotion, if you've begun to build in silence, know this: you are no longer preparing for wealth. You are embodying it. And that, my friend, is a turning point most never reach. At this stage of the journey, something powerful begins to take root. Not just in your habits, not just in your mindset, but in your very identity. You begin to see yourself differently. No longer as someone chasing success, but as someone responsible for it. The man on the path to unlimited wealth eventually stops hoping, stops wishing, and stops waiting. He decides. He takes ownership of his outcomes in a way that is rare. He no longer blames, he no longer explains, he no longer points outward. Because he understands now, everything begins with him. And once that shift occurs, your world changes. Quietly at first, internally, you stop being surprised by good things, because you expect them. Not arrogantly, but rightly. You've put in the work, you've planted the seeds, you've protected the soil. So when results begin to emerge, you don't say, "Why me?" You say, "Of course, I earned this." That subtle confidence rooted in discipline, not ego, is one of the clearest signs that wealth is close. And now your conversations evolve. You no longer engage in small talk for long, not because you're above it, but because your mind is occupied with deeper things. You think in outcomes, not opinions, in systems, not speculation. You become calm in debate, curious in conflict, and strategic with your words. You're no longer trying to win arguments. You're trying to build truth, and this way of speaking, measured, thoughtful, intentional, begins to signal something to the world. This man is different. You'll notice you start to attract mentors, not because you begged for their time, but because they see themselves in you. They recognize your pace, your stillness, your focus. And when a man further down the path sees a younger version of himself walking it with integrity, he is often moved to help. This is how doors open, not through noise but through alignment. The right people see you when you're walking rightly, and the wrong people disappear without needing to be pushed. You also begin to embrace solitude, not as loneliness but as refinement. You seek it, not to escape the world, but to understand yourself. You use silence to think, not to scroll, to create, not to consume. You begin to enjoy your own company because you are becoming someone you respect. That, my friend, is wealth. When your mind is no longer a place you wish to flee, but a place you feel most at home, you are rich beyond measure. And then you begin to forgive. Not because others deserve it, but because you do. You realize that resentment is a tax on your attention, that anger is an expense you cannot afford, and that holding on to old injuries, old betrayals, old mistakes, costs more than it returns. So you let them go, not out of weakness, but out of wisdom, because you now understand that peace is profit, and clarity is capital. And no man gets rich by clinging to weight that no longer serves him. Another sign begins to show itself in how you handle delay. In your earlier days, waiting felt like suffering. Now you see it as alignment, as calibration. You are no longer frantic for results. You are faithful to the process. You understand now that timing is intelligence, that the man who can wait with purpose is always wealthier than the man who acts with panic. This ability to be still while still moving forward, that's the signature of a builder. You also begin to treat your word like gold. You make fewer promises, but you keep all of them. You no longer exaggerate because you no longer need to. You don't chase attention. You don't try to impress. Your credibility becomes your currency. And when you say something, it means something. This is how the wealthy speak. Not loudly, but with weight. And now, perhaps most surprisingly, you begin to enjoy the work itself. Not just the rewards, not just the goals, but the effort, the challenge, the problem solving. You understand now that the man who learns to love the process will always outperform the man who loves only the prize, because the prize is fleeting. But the process, that is who you become, you start to see each day as a new opportunity to rise, to refine, to reassert your standard. And that consistency makes you unshakable. So if you are beginning to feel a deep respect for the process, if you've stopped explaining and started building, if you've found peace in silence and strength in solitude, if your expectations have risen and your circle has shrunk, do not look back. You are not wandering. You are walking with purpose, and the wealth you seek, whatever form it may take, is not ahead of you, it is within you. You are no longer hoping for change. You are becoming the cause of it. By now, a man who has walked this far along the path begins to experience a quiet but undeniable shift in how he is treated. Not just by the world, but by life itself. Opportunities begin to arrive without force. Solutions appear more quickly. People speak to him with more respect, more curiosity, more weight. It may not be loud. It may not even be obvious to those around him. But deep down, he knows something has changed. Not just in circumstance, in him. Because wealth is never merely the accumulation of things. It is the reorganization of self. The man who earns abundantly is not simply doing more. He is being more intentional, more precise, more aware, and that inner order begins to reflect outward. You'll see it in how he walks, how he speaks, how he reacts, or more accurately, how he doesn't. He no longer needs to prove himself, because who he is proves itself. You begin to notice that your energy has become more expensive. You don't give it away easily. You no longer enter every room. You no longer engage every conversation. You no longer respond to every invitation, not because of pride, but because of priority. You understand that your energy is not infinite, that where it flows, life grows. So you place it carefully, deliberately, with intention. This alone puts you in a class of your own. And then your vision sharpens. You stop being overwhelmed by possibilities. You begin filtering quickly, deciding firmly, and executing without delay. You no longer entertain ideas that distract from your core mission. You no longer chase trends. You no longer ask, what are they doing? You ask, what am I building? The man who is on the path to unlimited wealth focuses because he understands that divided attention creates divided outcomes. Another sign is your ability to walk away from noise, from deals, from attention, from people. You are no longer afraid to lose what does not serve you, because you have discovered the source of everything, you. And when you know that you are the source of your value, your insight, your output, your vision, nothing external can hold you hostage. That kind of detachment doesn't make you cold, it makes you clear. You also begin to build deeper integrity. You don't just keep your word, you align with it. What you say, what you believe, what you do, they begin to match, and in that alignment you find peace. Because you're no longer split, no longer pretending, no longer performing. You are simply and powerfully yourself. This is what makes people trust you. Not the pitch, not the polish, but the presence. Now your standards rise even higher, quietly, invisibly. You no longer tolerate messiness in thought, in business, in emotion. You clean things up, systems, processes, relationships. You no longer wait for problems to become unbearable. You solve them early, preventively. That mindset of order, before chaos, turns you into a magnet for progress. Because wealth follows order. It avoids chaos. And while others look for comfort, you look for clarity. You understand that ease without purpose is not rest. It is decay. So you build in seasons. You rest with reason. You plan with precision. You don't move fast, you move right. And that correction, in pacing, allows you to go further than the man who burned out chasing every glittering distraction. Now you begin to invest, not just in assets, but in people, in tools, in systems. You realize that leverage is the multiplier of wealth, and leverage comes from decisions. You ask, what can I automate? What can I delegate? What can I improve? You don't just work harder, you work smarter. And as your systems grow stronger, your time grows freer. And with that time, you think, you strategize, you build. You also become harder to impress, not out of arrogance, but because you understand the work behind excellence. You appreciate simplicity, depth, precision. You look at greatness and say, I respect that. But you never say, I could never do that, because now you know you can, if you're willing to go far enough, deep enough, long enough. And here, perhaps more than ever, you begin to feel the fullness of the path, the weight, the cost, the solitude, the responsibility, and still you choose it, every day, without complaint, without needing applause, because you have seen what life becomes when a man accepts his own power. So if you are beginning to say less, but mean more, if your focus is narrow, but your vision is vast, if you are cutting away the unnecessary to protect the essential, if you are building in silence, investing with wisdom, and walking in truth, then you are no longer preparing for wealth. You are living in it. And now we arrive at the final stretch of the journey, not the end, but the beginning of something irreversible. Because the man who has walked this far is no longer who he was. He has passed through silence, through solitude, through the shedding of his former self. And now the world begins to respond, not with noise or applause, but with confirmation. Quiet signals, subtle shifts, results that once seemed distant now arrive without announcement. Because the man who becomes wealth no longer needs to chase it. He has planted the seeds of discipline. He has watered them with consistency. He has shielded them from distraction. And now they grow, not in fits and starts, but in quiet, undeniable rhythm. And the world cannot resist such a man. Opportunities seek him. People refer him, clients stay. Resources move toward him. Not because he demands them, but because he embodies the order they are drawn to. He lives with a different kind of tempo now. While others sprint and collapse, he moves with elegant efficiency. Every action deliberate, every decision considered. He's no longer loud. He doesn't need to be. His results speak in every room he enters. His presence carries a weight that cannot be imitated. Because it wasn't borrowed, it was earned. And now he begins to give, not to impress, but to multiply. He teaches, he builds others. He shares not to posture, but to elevate. Because he knows that true wealth does not shrink when divided. It grows. He does not hoard, he does not flaunt, he contributes. He extends his reach, not to control, but to uplift. This, too, is wealth. The ability to expand others without shrinking yourself. He understands that reputation is not built in words. It is built in patterns, in how you show up when it's inconvenient, in how you perform when no one is watching, in how you respond when the pressure rises. And so he polishes himself, not for the eyes of others, but for the sake of his own standard. He remembers where he came from, but he is no longer bound by it. He builds forward. He builds up. And now, with clarity, he looks back, not to dwell, but to appreciate. He sees every struggle as necessary, every loss as calibration, every failure as a stepping stone. The road was not easy, but it was his. And now he owns it. He is no longer walking toward the life he wants. He is living it. Because he became the kind of man who could hold it, sustain it, multiply it. And still he continues. Because the man of unlimited wealth is not content with mere accumulation. He seeks elevation, expansion, evolution. Not to prove anything, but because he must. It is his nature now. He can no longer sit still in comfort. He must create, refine, lead, teach. There is no finish line, only deeper mastery. And he accepts that with joy, because he is no longer escaping struggle. He is choosing it with purpose. This man, the one who walks in quiet power, no longer moves with desperation. He moves with conviction. He does not demand certainty from the world. He provides it to himself. He does not rely on hope. He relies on principle. And wherever he goes, order follows, progress follows, respect follows. Not because he asked for it, but because he became it. And so if you find yourself walking this path, if the noise of the world has become background to the voice within, if you no longer panic in uncertainty, but build inside of it, if your actions have become a mirror of your standards, and your standards a reflection of your future, then know this: you are not chasing success anymore. You are not hoping for wealth anymore. You are not becoming someone new. You are revealing who you truly are. This is the final sign. The moment you realize that everything you needed was already within you, waiting to be disciplined, shaped, and expressed through action. This is when you stop looking for permission and start giving direction. When you stop consuming and start creating. When you stop hiding your greatness and start owning it. This is not the end. This is your beginning, and everything from here will compound.